Disney went kinda wild in the 2000s. At the end of their renaissance and before their 3D era, I feel like the studio started throwing some curveballs when it came to movies. And I mean that in the best way possible, because that's when they made some of my favorite animated films of all time. I also feel like this era doesn't get nearly as much love as it deserves. With the exception of Lilo and Stitch, I can't call the movies from that period massive hits or anything. They did okay, some better than others, and then they were quietly swept under the rug. Except insufferable online people like me just can't shut up about them. This is the case of the film I wish to discuss today, one that has captivated me since the first time I saw it. A tale of a boy who was barely starting to become a man, and how he will embark on a journey that was more than he bargained for. It's a story of how love can overcome any barriers, as long as you bare your heart and embrace the almost unbearable nature of change. Can you even begin to guess what tale could be the bearer of such lessons? I'll see myself out. Without further ado, let's gaze into the wonderful world of family and love as I want to talk about Brother Bear. Brother Bear is the tale of three brothers who live in a world which is guided by spirits. Said spirits represent the lives of those who came before us, be them animal or human, and they are responsible for all the changes this universe comes to. This is presented to us with a banger of an opening number, highlighting the journey of the local shaman contacting the spirits and our three boys gathering fish for the village. The oldest brother, Sitka, is the responsible and level-headed one, often having to break up the fights between his younger brothers and show them a better way to solve things. The youngest is Kenai, who tends to be more into playing than working hard, and acts the most immature out of the three. Then there's Denahi, who wants to be cool and collected, but always gives in to Kenai's provocations and loses his temper, showing that he too has some growing yet to do. Denahi is such a middle child, it's amazing. We then cut to the human village, where we see everyone preparing to the return of the shaman, which will give way to Kenai's totem ceremony. When a villager comes of age, they receive a totem handpicked by the spirits, depicting what animal best represents the trait that they must carry in their hearts in order to fully mature and leave their mark on the wall, which symbolizes the fulfillment of their growing journey. Sitka is the eagle of guidance, Denahi's totem stands for wisdom, and Kenai is very disappointed to see that he is the bear of love. Apparently, feeling disconnected from the meaning of your totem isn't an uncommon experience, as Sitka himself tells his brother about how he took some time to understand his role as a guide. Either way, Kenai still isn't convinced that he will ever grow into it. The way he sees it, love is just not a thing that should define a man. Because of Kenai's irreverence to his chores, a bear ends up stealing all the fish that the brothers have caught, and Kenai decides to go after the beast as an act of revenge. The other two follow him to try to dissuade him, but the bear locks them into a fight for their lives, with Sitka sacrificing himself to save his family. This only increases Kenai's desire for violence as he ventures into the woods one more time to settle his score against the animal. Denahi tries to stop him, but Kenai won't change his mind. The boy does find the bear, but the fight proves more challenging than he thought. With Denahi following his tracks, he battles for his survival against the creature, delivering his final blow. And we enter the best scene in the entire movie. Kenai stares at the desolating results of his vengeful actions, screaming at the heavens in frustration, his voice echoing through the mountains as a storm swells around him. Glorious lights cascade from the sky, engulfing him in the overwhelming spectacle of all the spirits that guide his very universe. As one brother desperately tries to reach him, the other lifts Kenai into the glow, enacting a transformation that defies all they thought possible. The visuals are nothing short of stunning. While this whole sequence develops, it's like the rest of the scenery around Kenai has dissolved completely, leaving only this dark void in the background, like there really is just him and the northern lights, existing in their own liminal plane. The music is its own work of art. It's haunting and majestic and completely sells the magic of what is happening. I get chills every single time I watch this. It's beyond remarkable. Denahi, unfortunately, missed one of the best scenes in animation history, and got there just in time to see a bear stumbling by and his brother's clothes on the ground, concluding that the beast has now claimed all of his siblings. Kenai stumbles down the mountain before Denahi has time to act, but now the brother has taken on the dreaded hunter role and vows to capture the creature himself. From this point on, we're really putting the bear in Brother Bear, as Kenai remains trapped in his bear form as he carries on with his journey. He wants to reach the mountain lights again so that he can have a talk with Sitka, and ends up joining forces with Coda, a cub who can take him there as long as Kenai walks him to the Salmon Run, where he hopes to reunite with his mom. We follow the story beats that one might expect from this sort of tale, but that doesn't make them any less uplifting. Coda's a very active and talkative kid, and Kenai doesn't have the patience for him at first, but along his journey he warms up to the cub and the two become close. A lot of this is accompanied by this adorable song by Phil Collins, who worked on a lot of the music, and it brings such a cozy vibe. Coda is handled with a lot of care in this film. Usually when we have little kid characters, I tend to find them really annoying, and if you're looking at this journey from Kenai's point of view, then annoying really is the key word to describe this cub. But I can't help but like him. The film knows exactly when to play it for laughs and when to quiet down into more serious scenes, such as when Coda admits he's been separated from his mom, or when he and Kenai discuss the nature of spirits. There is undeniably a part of Kenai that is represented in Coda. For the first time in his life, Kenai is experiencing firsthand what it's like to deal with a hyperactive, immature younger brother. And seeing him give into his caring side and adopt the cub as part of his family reflects his own journey of overcoming his childish side and growing into an adult. This is, after all, a movie about what it means to be a man, and I really like their take on that idea. At first, Kenai seems stuck on a notion of manhood that is based on strength and dominance. Being a man means never bowing down, never admitting defeat, never letting something else take advantage of you. This is a very skewed vision of masculinity, one which harms his community and puts him in great danger. Kenai was the reason why the bear took the fish from his village, but admitting his faults would be a sign of weakness, so instead he seeks to subdue the creature who defied him. It is, by all accounts, an empty act. It won't give him the fish back or repair the damaged basket. The best outcome for him would be proving his own physical dominance, an idea that even his brothers see as meaningless. It is this twisted notion of manhood that makes Kenai reject his totem, which, when you get down to it, is a gesture that carries immeasurable tragedy to it. The idea that, in order to be a man, you must reject the very concept of love.
You really think love has anything to do with being a man?
Sitka absolutely does not support this vision, and Denahi seems to follow his older brother's example. But when Sitka is gone, Denahi doesn't have his guidance anymore, and soon falls down that same path. There's this great scene where Denahi is following Kenai's trail. Denahi had tried to make Kenai change his mind, and now he's struggling to bring him back home. And in climbing the mountain where his brother's cries came from, he breaks and loses his spear. As he reaches the summit and concludes that the beast has won the battle, he picks up his brother's weapon, falling into the same twisted path of revenge. In other words, he has lost his own pacifist ways and adopted a new violent worldview, one that has only brought man to destruction. Now in his new form, Kenai has been made to reject that perspective, and he's been slowly learning to open himself up to creatures he once thought of as monstrous. He finds it within his heart to see them for who they are, and to understand that no one will win if they choose violence. To be a man isn't to prove you are superior, but to realize that you are equal to those who stand by your side. And that can only be done with sincerity and compassion. Only then you will be able to build a community, which is way more vital to one's survival than any weapon could ever be. Kenai and Coda finally reach the salmon run, where all the bears gather for their own annual celebration. Kenai had been slowly overcoming his misconceptions regarding those animals through his voyage, and this is where the last of his prejudices are shattered. He's scared at first, still giving in to his human tendencies, but he is immediately welcomed by the others, and enjoys himself just as any other bear would. The parallels between the human society and the animal world have been present since the very start of the film, but it's here that I find them the most glaring. Much like we are introduced to the humans through the celebration of a special occasion, with all the villagers gathered together, helping each other out and having a good time, we are also introduced to the true bear community through that same lens, showing that they really are one and the same. The very idea of totems stands as a reminder of this parallel. This notion that, despite their differences, there's still something inherently animal about human nature, and that it is by following those very instincts that one can fully grow. The spirits are the ultimate manifestation of this phenomenon, the harmonious mixture of those forces which then guide our changes. Understanding the natural world, the role it plays in your life, and your own place in it are the steps to becoming a man. On the other hand, limiting yourself as a separate entity, saying that you stand against the creatures that surround you because they do not belong to the same kind as you, is a toxic notion that you must outgrow. Much like a family is not limited to those who are related to you. It's your brothers, your neighbors, those who came before you, and those who are yet to come. It's this kid you found on the side of the creek. It's the friends he introduces you to. It's coexistence in its most precious form. The happiness of this festival doesn't last forever though, as Coda tells the story of how he and his mom got separated, making Kenai realize he was the reason why those two will never be reunited. In a gut-wrenching act of honesty, Kenai confesses the truth to Coda, drawing them closer as brothers, but mostly pushing them apart. Our story is reaching its conclusion as Denahi catches up to the beast, not knowing it's Kenai that stands under the fur coat. Despite his heartbreak, Coda joins the fight on the side of his newfound sibling, until Kenai jumps at the spear pointed at him, in the same gesture that once took a mother's life. You know, despite the countless times I watched this movie as a child, it only hit me now how this film doesn't have a villain. Denahi is in the wrong by choosing violence, but it hasn't been long since Kenai was in that same situation, even though he's supposed to be our hero. Denahi sees the bear as an antagonist, just like Kenai once did, but we understand that that's simply not true. It's a bunch of conflicting perspectives, clashing against each other, purely because they are never able to see the full picture. This reiterates the idea that we are all the same, a giant family of all sorts of beings, forging our own connections in an ever-changing world. Revenge is just as much of a choice as kindness can be. We become villains by choosing to turn ourselves into one. I cannot overstate how tragic it is to watch this movie knowing how it all plays out. Going back to a supposedly simpler time when the three brothers spent their days free of worry, watching as one of them decides to get revenge on an innocent creature. That's a mother he's fighting. That's a family he's maiming. And Kenai can only understand the true depth of his actions once he ends up on the other side of that same spear. Sitka flies in right before things get ugly, reversing the physical transformation of his brother, though nothing could ever erase the change that occurred within his heart. Following his true nature for the first time in his life, Kenai chooses to stay in his animal form, mending the family he once attempted to break, finally becoming the man he was meant to be. Here we have yet another example of a movie that can be explained entirely by its title. Brother Bear, because he is a brother who becomes a bear, but also because he has to be a brother to a bear. And if we really are one with nature, then the bear, as in every bear, is also our brother. I'm surprised to see a movie like this come out of a studio such as Disney. Not that they hadn't produced films that broke their own model before, and this example also features some aspects that are typical for other works from the company. But this is still a deviation from the adaptation-heavy, fairy tale-inspired tendencies of the so-called Disney Renaissance, which is a trend you can see in other features from the time. I feel a little out of place discussing the issue of representation in a movie such as this, as I am no authority in deciding whether or not this film stands as a good case of that. It's a tale that borrows heavily from Inuit and Native American customs and imagery, from the designs of the characters to the setting of their adventure, and it's a group that you don't see all that often in mainstream media. Despite the amount of research done during the production phases, however, it doesn't seem like much of the crew involved belongs to the groups that they are attempting to portray, and nowadays I feel like they would have handled matters a little differently in that regard. The company has made efforts to diversify its themes when dealing with stories surrounding characters of color, even if there is still a lot of work to be done. Again, I recognize my limits when trying to weigh in on the discussion, and I acknowledge the efforts that have been made in order to make up for these issues. But in any case, I appreciate the angle that Brother Bear took in trying to tell a story that was different from what general audiences had seen before, and it stands as an engaging example of how such tales can be rather compelling, making me wish we got way more of those. Other people have pointed out how the musical style of this movie doesn't always work, with how you don't really get the character singing and just have, well, Phil Collins singing instead. There's this brilliant video essay by Sideways that explains the issue with a lot more detail, but I feel like having Brother Bear as the sort of non-musical Disney musical further cements it as belonging to that wild era of post-Renaissance films, and it helps it stand out from the rest of the company's lineup. Like in this scene, where Kenai has to tell Coda about what happened to his mother. I love it how we don't have access to this dialogue aside from short snippets, and we just get the music instead. If this had been a musical number sung by the Brother Bear himself, it would have lost all the weight that it carries. Not to mention, I just love these songs. The opening number is great, the Bear Festival number has this great hearty vibe to it, they're just all fun and fitting. And man, this movie is gorgeous. It's an absolute pleasure to look at. The colors are bursting out at every moment. The backgrounds have this organic quality to them, like you can see the brushstrokes that compose the full picture. I am a great fan of this style, and it's wonderfully used here. And just when the final scene ends and you think you've seen a solid 10 out of 10 movie, the credits have extra scenes! Why did we stop doing that? I will perish defending credit bloopers. We really peaked as a species here. This movie did okay when it came out, even if it didn't break any box office records. It did get a direct-to-video sequel sometime later, but that's kind of it in terms of its legacy within the company. Except, I feel like the industry kept returning to this film one way or another, like when Brave came out, and all the trailers were super vague about what the story actually entailed, and then we saw the mom become a bear, and we all just went, oh, it's just like Brother Bear. Or when The Good Dinosaur happened and they had this whole thing where you could leave your mark on the wall the day you became a man, and sure, Brother Bear didn't invent that concept, but again, I just kinda went, yeah, just like Brother Bear. Man, I wish I were watching Brother Bear instead. Like, okay, maybe I am getting a lot of Boss Baby vibes from this, but I think it just speaks to the impact that this movie had on me, and that I'm sure it had on many other people as well. Brother Bear is, at its core, a story about love, and all the forms that it has, and all the power that it carries. It is the only force capable of setting us free and helping us grow. It is what guides our existence and helps us carry on. It is so intrinsic to our nature that rejecting it will only bring you grief. It's a tale of empathy, of family, of change and maturity, and I will always bear it as a blessing in my heart. Thank you for watching. Well, hello there. It was very nice of you to watch this video. Special thanks to my beautiful patrons for making videos like these possible. You guys are my animal siblings. If you have enjoyed the video, you can also help me out by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell too. You can also follow me on Twitter and share this video with your friends. Feel free to leave a comment down below, especially if it is about how much you love Brother Bear. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye! Fun fact, before smartphones were available and you could take an internet personality test whenever you wanted, we would hop onto our Brother Bear DVDs and take Tanana's totem quiz.